You know, when we talk about these huge billion-dollar construction projects, we often picture the finished product, right? The shiny skyscrapers, the big new bridges.
Yeah, the structures themselves.
Exactly. But maybe the real marvel, for those in the industry at least, is happening kind of behind the scenes with the actual machines,
Yeah.
the heavy equipment.
Oh, absolutely. There's this fundamental shift going on for years, decades even. The big stuff, excavators, cranes, you name it. It was almost like an afterthought for these big firms.
An afterthought. How so?
Well, it was seen as just a background function.
Hmm?
Necessary, sure, but often buried somewhere in procurement or just kind of scattered across different job sites. Very little central oversight.
Okay, so if it was critical but buried, what did that actually mean day to day? What were the hidden problems, the inefficiencies? Because something's definitely changing now. You called it a quiet revolution.
That's a good way to put it.
We're seeing this big move in how large construction companies handle their equipment. It's going from that maybe disorganized back office thing
Right.
to being treated as a real strategic asset. And here's the kicker. Sometimes even becoming a revenue engine.
That's really the heart of it. These forward-thinking contractors, they're realizing their equipment isn't just a cost line item. It's an asset they can control, optimize,
And make money from.
potentially, yes, or at least stop losing money on. It's not just some accounting game. It's about unlocking capital that's tied up, turning an expense into something strategic. You shift the thinking from how much does this cost us per hour to what's the return on this asset.
So what's pushing this? Is it just technology?
Tech's a huge part, yeah. But it's also, the demands on job sites are different now, and there's massive internal pressure to find better margins. So companies are actually restructuring, setting up their equipment teams as almost standalone businesses.
Like their own division.
Exactly, with their own leadership, their own systems, their own financial targets. They might have their own P&L, manage their own balance sheet, operating like a separate little company within the big company. That demands a whole new level of accountability.
Wow, a revenue engine. That's a big jump from just being a cost. So, okay, our mission today for this deep dive is really to unpack why this is happening now and how are the leading companies actually making this work.
And what it means for the bottom line, right? Efficiency, profit.
Yeah, and maybe even the future of how construction gets done. We want to show you how this overlooked cost center is turning into a real source of competitive advantage. And we've pulled our insights from a really detailed document called Treating Equipment Like a Business, plus some other related stuff.
It really is a fascinating change to watch unfold.
Okay, so to really get why this revolution is happening, maybe we should look back first at what you called the organized chaos of the past.
Right. Let's set the stage.
Historically, equipment management, well, it was managed, I guess, but loosely, right?
Yeah.
Teams just asked for what they needed, whenever.
Yeah, very reactive. Maintenance often got pushed back until something broke down. Utilization, well, if you even tracked it, it was probably a rough guess.
And the money side, just depreciation and maybe some vague overhead. I heard this story once about a project manager spending a whole day literally just hunting down one specific machine that vanished between sites. Is that the kind of chaos we're talking about?
That's exactly it. And look, maybe that worked okay when margins were fatter and projects were simpler, but today, it just doesn't fly.
Why not? What's changed so drastically?
Accountability, for one.
Yeah.
Companies just can't afford to have expensive equipment sitting idle anymore. Delays, because you don't have the right machine. That's not just annoying, that's lost revenue. Pure and simple.
Plus, everyone wants to know where the money's going.
Absolutely. Internal teams, clients, stakeholders, they want to see how resources are being used, how they're performing, if they're actually worth the investment. And with projects on tighter timelines, more complex logistics. You have to know what's in your fleet, where it is, what it's doing, and, crucially, the value it's bringing. The old way just can't provide that anymore.
Okay, so the old model's broken. But what are the specific pressures really forcing this change now? You mentioned margin pressure earlier. Is that the biggest one?
It's definitely a huge driver, no question. Bids are tighter, profits are squeezed, so companies have to look at everything. And equipment, which used to be kind of seen as a sunk cost.
Just part of doing business.
Right. Now it's being looked at as either, a potential source of value or a silent killer of profits if it's not managed well.
And then there's just the sheer complexity of it all, isn't there? I mean, trying to juggle dozens, maybe hundreds of projects across different regions.
Oh, absolutely. Getting the right equipment to the right place on time, working reliably without a centralized system, it's basically impossible to coordinate effectively.
What about data? You hear so much about data these days.
And that's another key pressure, the power of utilization data. Just knowing what's being rented out versus what's sitting idle, or maybe what's being overused.
Hmm.
That knowledge gives you a massive advantage. You make smarter buying decisions. You cut down on waste. You deploy assets where they're actually needed. It feeds directly into efficiency.
This must also ripple out to how companies work with subcontractors too, right? On these big, complex jobs with lots of different teams.
Definitely. Think about it. Unclear who owns what piece of equipment, inconsistent delivery times, last-minute scrambles for a specific machine. It causes delays, friction, inefficiency.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
Lots of finger pointing, probably.
exactly. But when you set up a formal equipment entity, almost like an internal rental company with clear rate cards, service agreements, maybe even digital ordering,
Ah, like a proper business transaction.
precisely, it brings structure, speed, predictability.
Hmm.
Subcontractors know what to expect. They get more reliable access. Internal teams get visibility. It cuts down conflict, especially on those massive multi-phase projects. And honestly, it boosts the contractor's reputation. They look more organized, more reliable.
Okay, so it's control, efficiency, predictability. The why seems pretty clear. The old way doesn't work. The pressures are intense. But let's get into the how. How are companies actually doing this? We need some real-world examples.
Yeah, let's look at some blueprints. And the common thread, like you said, is they all treat equipment like a real business, not just overhead. They want control, better margins, smarter ways of working.
So who's doing this well?
Well, Six-Side Supply is a really interesting case. It actually started smaller, just managing tools and consumables internally,
Okay.
but it grew into this standalone, they call it a captive procurement company, basically an internal business supplying the parent company.
So its purpose changed over time.
Big time. Initially, it was maybe about compliance or tax stuff, but then it became about cutting out markups from third parties, making logistics smoother, and actually generating profit on everything from everyday stuff to huge items like electrical switchgear or air handlers.
Profit on internal supply.
By buying smarter, managing inventory efficiently, and charging projects a fair internal rate that still beats external options, but allows Six-Side to operate profitably. They've got dedicated warehouses, a smart regional fulfillment model.
Hmm.
It gives McGough stability, cost control, and agility.
And you mentioned something critical earlier, profit visibility for the project managers.
Yes, this is key. Through their systems, the PMs can actually see the margin their project is generating by using Six-Side Supply.
So it's not just a cost they have to absorb, they get credit for making a smart sourcing decision.
Exactly. It turns procurement into this strategic lever. It incentivizes them to use the internal option because it directly impacts their project's bottom line. They're like mini CEOs managing their spend.
That's clever. Okay, who else?
Then there's Turner Construction. They set up FEC, First Equipment Company, explicitly created as a separate business to make equipment a revenue generator, not just internal support.
So how does FEC operate differently?
It functions almost like a subcontractor itself. It rents equipment not just to Turner's own internal project teams, but also directly to their subcontractors on the job site.
Oh, interesting. So that opens up a whole new income stream.
Right. Plus, it lets them buy equipment at wholesale volumes, improving their margins.
And I heard their strategy is quite specific about what they own versus rent.
Yeah, that's smart too. FEC tends to own the high-margin, high-frequency items, things like light towers, temporary bathroom trailers, generators, stuff that's always needed.
Okay.
But the really heavy, high-liability stuff like massive cranes,
Hmm.
they often still outsource that. It keeps them agile, reduces their risk, and capital tied up in very specialized, expensive assets. It's a calculated balance.
Makes sense. And one more example.
Suffolk Construction's Fuse Group. Again, a standalone entity, but maybe with a broader scope, centralizing equipment, logistics, and other support services across all their sites.
So more than just equipment.
Yeah, it seems like a more integrated support platform. The goal is a unified, scalable model. Streamline how things get fulfilled, get better visibility on assets like fencing or temporary power units, and really strengthen operational control.
And Fuse helps them decide the classic own lease rent question.
Exactly. By having that central view and control, they can make much smarter decisions about whether it makes sense to buy an asset, lease it long-term, or just rent it for a specific job. The aim is less downtime, better return on the assets they do own.
So these examples really show it's not just theory. Companies are actively restructuring and finding value. And this idea of internal rentals seems central.
It's a huge part of it, yeah. turning their own fleet into this internal revenue source.
And it seems like they're tapping into a bigger market trend.
Absolutely. You mentioned the numbers. The U.S. construction rental market is massive, over $83 billion in 2024, projected near $88 billion next year. And rental penetration, meaning how much equipment is sourced via rental, hit a record 57%.
57%. So more than half the equipment used is rented.
That's the estimate, yeah. So general contractors looked at that and thought, wait a minute, we're spending a fortune renting from third parties.
Why not rent from ourselves?
Exactly. Build an internal rental division, recapture that spend, keep it inside the company. Plus, you improve how well you use your own assets and get tighter control.
And you said this changes behavior, not just the accounting.
Oh, definitely. It forces discipline. You start routing your fleet more strategically between jobs. Idle machines aren't just sitting there costing money. They're seen as missed revenue opportunities. So you find ways to put them to work.
And it justifies buying new equipment.
It makes the case much clearer. You have data on utilization, on internal rental revenue. It supports strategic capital decisions, not just reactive buying. And it gives you way more accurate job costing.
What about renting out, like to others?
That's the next step for some. Controlled external rentals. If you have excess capacity, maybe you lease it to subcontractors working on the same site, or even affiliated companies. Again, fully tracked, invoiced.
So it boosts utilization even further and cuts down reliance on outside vendors.
Right. More control, potentially more revenue from the assets you already own.
Okay, this sounds powerful, but also complex. It feels like this needs some serious technology behind it, more than just sticking GPS trackers on things.
Oh, way more.
Yeah.
You can't just spin off an equipment group into a business unit with spreadsheets. You need a proper integrated, probably customizable software platform, a real system of record for the whole operation.
Like the McGough example, Six Side Supply. You mentioned their tech transformation.
Exactly. They realized their original system couldn't keep up as they grew, and their model changed. So they didn't just tweak it, they fundamentally reevaluated how they used their software, rental result in their case. They rebuilt processes around it.
Rebuilt how? What did they change?
Things like how orders came in, how billing worked, procurement, those crucial intercompany transactions between Six Side and the main construction projects.
And that reverse rental contract thing you mentioned.
Yeah, that was a key customization.
Right.
It basically automates the internal markup process, making sure jobs get billed correctly, reflecting the margins right there at the transaction level. No more double entry or guesswork.
But the real game changer was that profit visibility dashboard.
Absolutely. That's where the tech enables the strategy. Leadership can pull up dashboards showing project teams, look, this is how much profit your project generated by sourcing through Six Side.
Which directly motivates them, like we said. It makes procurement a performance metric.
Precisely. So you see, these purpose-built platforms, they're designed for this kind of operational and financial control. They handle scale, they let you measure performance, they manage those tricky intercompany workflows, they integrate with the big company ERP systems like SAP or CMC.
So they manage the real-world complexity.
Right. Without that robust system, internal rentals are just kind of ad hoc, probably under-optimized. With it, they can become this predictable, profitable growth engine.
Okay, so it's clear this isn't just about org charts and software. You mentioned culture change earlier, and that feels like maybe the hardest part.
It often is. It's the final piece and maybe the most underestimated. You have to get everyone, field teams, project managers, finance aligned around a totally new way of operating. It's a huge behavioral shift.
Like that foreman you mentioned, used to just grabbing a tool, now having to think about it being tracked, charged.
Exactly. And one of the biggest shifts is moving away from fragmented local ways of doing things. Every site manager with their own spreadsheet or making calls to a single unified standard process.
One playbook for everyone.
Right. Powered by that central equipment entity and the tech platform. It cuts down on friction, confusion, and lets the company scale confidently because everyone's working the same way.
And the shift from informal requests like a quick phone call to structured orders, that must feel like red tape at first.
It might, initially. Field teams might think, oh, great, more paperwork. But the reality is that discipline actually improves turnaround times. It prevents bottlenecks. It ensures the site gets what it needs when it needs it.
Because the equipment is now treated like a real, measurable, chargeable resource.
Exactly. That understanding changes behavior. People become more mindful of planning and usage.
What about the people running this? Do you need a whole new team?
Not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but often augmenting the team. bringing in people with specific rental industry experience or logistics expertise. They act like catalysts, kind of bridging the old ways with the new, more structured model.
And all this effort, how does it ultimately benefit the contractor in the eyes of their clients? Does it change their value proposition?
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
When a contractor can offer in-house logistics, guaranteed equipment availability, reliable fulfillment, they're not just a builder anymore. They're more like a one-stop shop.
Which must be appealing to clients, developers.
Hugely. Think about the simplicity and reliability. The client knows the GC isn't scrambling to find third-party suppliers for critical stuff. That operational self-sufficiency. It can absolutely be a tiebreaker when bidding for projects.
Plus, the internal benefits we talked about, lower overhead from fewer third-party
It's
rentals.
profitability, yeah. And because they control the equipment flow internally, they can often reduce bottlenecks, get sites ready faster. It all leads back to better project execution and happier clients. It's a real win-win.
So, looking ahead, where does this go? These internal equipment divisions sound like they're evolving pretty rapidly.
I think they'll move further away from just being support and become true specialized partners within the company, measured strictly on things like utilization, profitability, the quality of service they deliver to the projects.
And maybe even looking outwards. You mentioned renting to subs. Could they serve other external partners eventually?
It's possible for mature operations, maybe not becoming full-blown rental companies competing in the open market, but strategically using excess capacity, especially on large long-term projects where they already have a presence. It's all about maximizing the value of those owned assets.
And tech just keeps getting more important.
Absolutely central. The tools that connect planning, tracking, financials, maybe even internal marketplaces for equipment, that becomes the essential plumbing. Things like better forecasting, automated resource assignment between jobs, automatic cost recovery. That's what will really separate the leaders.
So wrapping this up, it feels like equipment management is becoming a mirror reflecting the overall sophistication of the construction business itself.
That's a great way to put it. The really effective contractors, going forward, will be the ones who tightly align their equipment strategy with their overall company goals: consistency, control, and the ability to scale predictably.
What a journey. From a background cost center to a strategic, potentially profit-driving asset. It really underscores how optimizing equipment can boost internal coordination, cut reliance on third parties, bring clarity to costs, and just make operations way more predictable.
It really is about doing more and doing it smarter with the resources you already have.
Which leads us to some key questions maybe for you, the listener, to think about in your own world. First, do you really have clear visibility into how your own fleet or key assets are being used?
Second, are your internal teams all on the same page, working under a consistent system, a consistent process for managing these resources?
Third, think about the money. How much spend are you currently sending out to third-party rentals or suppliers that could potentially be recaptured or managed more effectively internally?
And finally, does your current technology, your tech stack, actually allow you to operate your equipment group or any similar resource pool like a true business, with real financial tracking and performance metrics?
Those are tough questions. But the answers, well, they might just reveal some significant opportunities hiding in plain sight. Opportunities that, maybe for too long, have just been overlooked. This quiet revolution in construction. Maybe it sparks some ideas about where similar changes could happen for you.